some huge hands. I thought he's getting ready to go up and lean in like D. Brown did in the dunk contest. Remember former Celtics? Yeah.
All right, back here with Coach Mangini. The biggest question in Pittsburgh these days, what's going to happen with Antonia Brown? According to reports, the Steelers are exploring trades for the mercurial wide receiver, but AB hasn't ruled out returning to Pittsburgh. He's reportedly open to a dialogue with the Steelers. Despite that report, he did post this on Instagram. Check it out. There's Antonia Brown in a 49ers jersey with the comment, "When the GOAT embraces you." This was in response to a recent comment Jerry Rice made about Brown being a good fit in San Francisco. Coach.
I didn't see that.
Coach, what would have to happen for AB to be welcomed back into the Steelers locker room at this point?
He's Instagram pictures of him in another uniform.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hadn't seen
Good
that.
Photoshop right there.
Go ahead.
He's got this has got to stop at some point. Between the Instagram photos and the advisors that he's bringing into his inner circle, I think that it's just building on top of each other. But it doesn't make any sense for either side to head towards divorce. That this is a situation that should be able to get worked out, and it's going to take people sitting down together and actually having an honest conversation and finding out what really bothers Antonio Brown and what's bothering the organization, and getting to the point where there's an understanding of how things are gonna proceed in the future. And it just seems like everybody's communicating through third parties, through social media. All that is just adds fuel to the fire. Go sit down, talk about it, and see where you come out after the meeting.
What are they waiting for at this point? Why even wait unless this thing sort of builds and builds?
I think they're waiting well, you can't trade him now.
No, but why wouldn't the organization sit down with Antonio Brown right now?
She's saying what are they waiting for?
Why wouldn't the Steelers
Because I don't think he's answering their calls.
Yeah, they have called him.
I think
he's communicated other people. Terrell Owens, who you said, Terrell said he's mentoring him now. Let's see how that goes. That would be a first time ever. Jerry Rice has communicated with him. He felt good enough about what Jerry said and the relationship with Jerry that he could post photos with him in a 49er uniform, which to me, that's very, very aggressive. So I don't see him coming back to Pittsburgh. And if he does come back to Pittsburgh, these are a couple of things have to happen. He's got to have a come to Jesus meeting with Mike Tomlin. Because regardless of what Mike Tomlin wants to say as far as control of that locker room, unless he gets to control this one player, his voice is going to be compromised when he's speaking to the other 52 guys, because they have seen him be inconsistent in dealing with a star player and how he deals with everyone else. And that affects a coach when you get one-on-one relationships. When you sit down with other players and you say, I have an open door policy, and we sit down and now you tell me something that's contrary to I see how you're treating other players. It takes away your ability to lead people. It takes away for your ability to have an impact on guys and be consistent day in and day out. Guys start thinking, oh, you know something? I'm going to start doing my own thing. I'm not going to start listening to the coach because I've seen him be inconsistent throughout the years in dealing with this star player. And also, not only does he have to meet with Tomlin, they have to meet with 4 or 5 guys on the Steelers to be able to say we want him back in the locker room. Because the organization controls the team, but the players control the locker room. And if they don't get both of those things back in harmony, I believe they should move on from him.
So Terrell Owens, Jerry Rice, Chris Carter, those 3 guys have 3 things in common, I would say. 1, they are all on the top 5 all-time receivers. 2, they all have agreed and have all said independently, Antonio Brown is one of, if not the hardest worker, works as hard as anyone in the NFL. And they agree with his teammates on that. That's one thing in this article Jeremy Fowler wrote, was about it, that you have multiple guys going on the record saying hardest worker on the team, hardest worker I've ever seen. And he's clearly respected by a lot of his teammates, speaking to the fact that even though he was always kind of a late arriver and a guy who might on Wednesday mornings not be there when he was supposed to be, he was voted team MVP 4 separate times since he became this star player. But the other thing in that Jeremy Fowler piece that was interesting that I think has to happen if there's any type of resolution coming, Bud Dupree put his name on it. He said, listen, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to pick between Big Ben and Antonio Brown. Now, maybe that was a bit of a slip up by him, but he said it and it's quoted. We went on to find out in that article, Antonio was very upset about that radio spot that when Big Ben said he ran the wrong route on the pick in the end zone, I think against Cincinnati, forget who it was against. But
yeah, that wasn't the first time he ran the wrong route. That's the first time publicly they acknowledge it, because he has run the wrong route for a long time. He is freelance for a long time. People like myself, I wasn't at liberty to discuss it because the Pittsburgh Steelers, you know what they would have said? If I would have said he's freelancing, they would have been, oh, that's wrong. He just made that up.
And so the real we know what the conflict is. The biggest conflict. He and Big Ben. He does not get along right now.
And a little Mike Tomlin.
Well, listen, but the Tomlin thing, they were dealing with it. He had been a kind of consistent in a negative way almost. He was consistently tardy. He was consistently, like it looked like in this past offseason at training camp, he was staying at an Airbnb instead of with the other team, and Tomlin kind of looked the other way. Like, it didn't come to a boiling point until he threw that football at Big Ben and no showed, no called. If they are going to resolve it, somehow he and Big Ben have to get back on the same page, which they were on. He has a framed picture at his locker of he and Big Ben with a signed inscription from Big Ben to him. Like, they at one point had a good relationship. It's gone.
Let me tell you something about that, man. If I'm catching balls for you, you don't have to have no signed picture. That's a bunch of BS.
Okay.
All right? Oh, yeah, I got a signed portrait of someone. If Edelman, you think Edelman, with his relationship with Tom Brady, got a signed portrait of Tom Brady in the locker room for everyone to see? That's some wide receiver BS, man. He just wants to show, all right? So there's always been a discord, all right, between the two, and I don't see them coming together, Coach.
I don't see how you can say someone is the hardest worker. So it's the hardest worker when you decide to show up. I mean, I don't see how you can not have those two things go together. And they do need to sit down with Tomlin. They do need to sit down with Big Ben. They need to sit down with ownership. All those things need to come into play. And then there's got to be some accountability. Look, if he is running the wrong routes, there needs to be some accountability as to why that's happening. And there needs to be an honesty as to what's going to happen moving forward. Now, here's the other thing is, if you let guys shoot their way out of the locker room, you've got a big, big problem. Because once you establish that if I'm disruptive enough, you'll get rid of me, and you'll get rid of me and take a loss, then anybody who signs a big contract who suddenly isn't happy with their situation is going to follow the same playbook. So if it doesn't work out, there needs to be a hard line drawn to say that you can't do this to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you can say what you want about the Le'Veon Bell situation. It wasn't great, but they had to draw a line in terms of what's okay and what's not okay.
All right, Coach, we'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, Anthony Davis has demanded a trade.